Hi guys, welcome back to Sacred Vedic Astrology. My name is Samantha and I'm so blessed and so grateful to be a professional Vedic sidereal astrologer. So today this topic conjured up for me in the ethers, and what I want to talk about today is this idea of being attracted to spiritual relationships in the Vedic astrological chart. I want to unravel for you guys how you can find this in your own personal D1, but also D9 navamsha is also very important for relationship analysis as well too. Astrologically, being drawn to relationships, connections, business partnerships, you never want to forget the 7th house is the house of business as well too. Why? Because in Bhavat Bhavam, it's the 10th from the 10th, all right? So when we are more drawn to spiritual, karmic, moksha-like relationships, we are drawn to connections that elevate us in some way spiritually, or relations or connections that have a spiritual karmic undertone to them. All right. What does this mean? What does this mean, right? This might sound like a lot of jargon to some people, but the essence of what I'm trying to express in this is that some people are more drawn to those like mundane day-to-day relationships and connections where things are just very, let's say Saturn. Let's say it's very Saturn-like relationships where things are about, duty and responsibility and structure, and connections that are more about the day-to-day world and the daily realm of existence, all right? And there's no judgment in either way, right? It's not that this is worse, this is better, this is worse, this is better. We're not going into those places because astrology is actually trying to take that judgment out of it, because we all have vastly different karmic paths that we are here to live and unravel, and to have judgment towards someone else's path is not why we're here. That is not why we're here, all right? So when I discuss these topics, I'm not saying one is better, one is worse. They are just different in someone's karma in this lifetime. All right. So someone has a lot of Saturn influence on Venus, Saturn in the 7th house, Saturn aspecting the 7th house Lord. They are attracted to relationships that are more Saturn-like. They want duty, they want responsibility, they want structure. They want the daily routines and the daily life to make sense. All right. And they're very committed in their relationships in that sense of even when it gets boring, even when it gets mundane, they will stay in those relationships because Saturn is like that binding glue of something that is more mundane and can be a little boring, right? Saturn isn't fun. We don't have fun when Saturn's around, right? So it's not really bringing all that fun into relationships, right? If someone has Mars in their 7th, aspecting their 7th, they need passion, they need that stimulation in relationships, all right? They need relationships to feel exciting, right? It's all different. But what I'm gonna hone in on and focus on in this video is what is bringing that moksha spiritual energy into our relationship sector of the charts, all right? Because I see it in a lot of clients. I see K2 on Venus, K2 in the 7th, Jupiter in the 7th. I have a personal chart that is all about spiritual relationships, and that's all I've ever been drawn to. I have this like ongoing joke that I've only dated psychic mediums, witches, and gurus. Which is like funny, but it's also true. Like, ask any of my friends, I'm always in some weird karmic past life guru relationship. Like, I'm always like, here we go again, But that's how my chart is unraveling in this lifetime. And that is what I like. I can't be in those like Saturn-Venus relationships where it's like, all right, like, let's go do this boring day-to-day thing. I'm like, let's go to the temple, let's go meditate. Let's go buy 10 crystals and try to heal our past life karma. Like, you don't want to do that, So that's how my chart is in this lifetime, and that's what I've always been drawn to, and that's always the relationships I find myself in, relationships, friendships, business partnerships, okay? So it's something that I'm very conscious of, and I'm very able to spot astrologically because it's in my field of awareness, because I'm like, this is something I've seen in my own life constantly, time and time again. All right, so when we talk about being attracted to more spiritual, divine relationships, this can also just be being attracted to people that have their own sense of awareness, their own sense of spirituality, their own sense of consciousness, right? Because here's the thing is like, being conscious doesn't mean that someone has to believe the same things that you believe. They just have to have this awareness that there is more out there than the physical plane of existence, right? So for me, like, I can't date someone who doesn't believe in astrology, because not believing in astrology is not being open-minded to different concepts that are out there. That's what the essence of that is actually about, right? So if you're drawn to more spiritual connections and relationships, you're actually just drawn to someone who is conscious and is open-minded to different aspects of life and consciousness, all right? So for example, if someone is very religious, is that necessarily going to vibe with my belief system? No, but I love that someone has a belief system. At least they have one, right? Because that's how my chart is. Like, I need someone who has a belief, a strong philosophical, spiritual belief system. If we're getting these placements in the astrological chart, D1 or D9 navamsha, it's going to be an undertone and it's going to be an archetype that someone is going to need and is going to be drawn to in relationships. Spirituality, someone with their own strong beliefs, something that is karmic, something that is, interesting spiritually, essentially, right? And we are going to go through the different points of this that you can look to in your D1 and your D9 navamsha. All right, so let us start with K2. Now, K2 in the 7th, or K2 aspecting the 7th house lord, or K2 aspecting Venus, which is the karaka for relationships. This is going to bring K2's influence into connections and into relationships. Now, we could go to a place where we can say that K2 in the 7th, K2 aspecting the 7th lord, K2 sitting very closely with the 7th lord, or K2 aspecting Venus is because we have a lot of karma that we're repaying from past lives. We can say that and we can go there. Yes, it will show us that a lot of our karma is being paid out in relationships, good and bad. So you'll find a lot of people with K2's influence on their 7th house lord, onto Venus. They meet people where it's like, oh, we're doing this karmic dance again in this lifetime. Right, here we go. We're going to clear it. We're going to work through it, right? And it's funny because we can have a negative perspective of that, or we can have a positive perspective, and we can be grateful that we are working through it so we don't have to do it again in the next lifetime. K2's influence on the 7th house lord on Venus is that feeling of like this cyclical energy in relationships and connections, where we have some stuff that we're working out and we're working through karmically, spiritually. Past life influence is coming in here. Now, K2 is also elusive. It's also very illusionary. It's like a void. So you'll find when K2 is in the 7th, aspecting the 7th lord with Venus, the karaka for relationships, especially in a man's chart, it can be connections that come in, we learn a lot, and then they're just as fleeting. They're just as K2, like it's there and then it's not there. And it's like, where is that person? We can't really grasp them because we can't really grasp the energy of K2. K2 is the void. It's the energy that is not quite there. It's not quite something we can feel on the physical plane. So if we have a lot of K2 influence into our relationships, we can attract partners where it's like, why are they so distant? Or why are they so disconnected? Why are they not there? That is K2 in the 7th, right? And it can be because we have to eventually let go of a lot of relationships as well, too, with K2's influence. So K2 is elusive, it's strange, it's a void, it's past life karma, it's something we're karmically paying back in this lifetime, it's drugs, it's alcohol. So we get K2's influence on the 7th. We can also attract a lot of like these weird partners who are always like, off doing weird drugs or something like that. So it can connect to that like, drug related energy. Same with Rahu's influence on the 7th, because both Rahu and K2 is that shadowy energy. There can be a lot of secrets and illusions that come up with both Rahu and K2. But K2 is more of that spiritual higher octave, right? So K2 is something that we feel very innately drawn to, but also we got to let it go at some point because we have to detach from it. So a lot of people with K2 in the 7th meet a lot of connections or relationships where it feels faded, it feels good, and then time goes on and you're like, oh no, I actually have to let this go to release this karmic experience. That is K2. But it's very spiritual. It's moksha. K2 is not this world, it's the other world. So if we have K2 influence on our 7th, K2 on our Venus, we're meeting people where we're like, I can see your past life. I have K2 on Venus, and I literally meet people and I'm like, oh, back from that ancient time, ancient Egypt, here we go again, right? It's like that with K2 on Venus, K2 influence onto our relationship sector. We have an innate remembrance of we've done this before, we've met before, we're doing this karmic dance again. That's K2. All right. Now, the next important spiritual aspect in relationships is going to be the 7th house lord in the D1 and the D9 navamsha. This is very important in the D9 navamsha as well, too. All right. I would actually go as far to say the 7th house lord in the D9 navamsha is the most important for chart analysis of relationships. All right. Now, 7th house lord in the 4th house, yes, that's a moksha house, but that's more real estate, that's more homes, that's more lands. So if you have 7th house lord in the 4th house, you can end up with a partner who has great real estate. You can meet them through your family. That's more of that 4th house. Like, is the 4th house moksha? Yes, it's different than the 8th house and the 12th house, though. So 7th house lord in the 8th house is getting some sort of loss at times in relationships. The most extreme manifestation I've seen is a death of a partner with the 7th house lord in the 8th house, because 8th house is that house of loss. And 8th house is that really sort of darker, taboo, more occult energy. So the highest manifestation of 7th house lord in the 8th house is someone who's a psychic, someone who's an astrologer, or someone who works with other people's money. All right. So if you have 7th house lord in the 8th house, it is that weird spiritual moksha, letting go, taboo, weird energy. But you should go towards partners or relationships where they are either in psychic fields. Maybe they're an astrologer, maybe they're a psychic, maybe they're a psychologist, or they handle and work with other people's money. That is also the 8th house. Never forget that one with the 8th house. All right, if we miss that influence on the 8th house, we're going to miss a lot of information in Vedic astrology. I can't even tell you guys how many clients I've had where they have a super active 8th house and they work in banking and finance because that's the 8th house. It's other people's money. Best believe it and don't forget it. All right, so 7th house lord in the 8th is going to give that weird 8th house moksha influence, but it can cause problems, right? 7th house lord in the 8th or 7th house lord in the 12th, I have seen time and time again to cause issues in relationships because those are Dastana houses. Moksha, yes, but also Dastana in the sense that it is not the highest energy that we want house-wise, all right? So 7th house lord in the 8th can give relationship problems. 7th house lord in the 12th can give relationship problems. Don't ever kid yourself with that. But we can use it in the sense of like, oh, I need to go towards the spiritual astrological partner. 7th house lord in the 8th house. Oh, I need to go towards the partner who handles other people's money. 7th house lord in the 8th house. All right. 7th house lord in the 12th house is enlightenment, raising consciousness. If we have the 7th lord in the 12th, it can cause losses, it can cause expenses in relationships, foreign travel, yes. But the highest manifestation is being with someone who understands that they need to elevate or raise consciousness in this lifetime. So it can be a partner who raises consciousness through writing, through work, through teaching, through meditation, right? 7th house lord in the 12th house would be a classic placement of like meditating with your partner, right? Like going off to the meditation centers, that's 7th house lord in the 12th house. It's someone who has to have an idea of consciousness in this lifetime. All right. And that's how the 8th house and 12th house are very different in themselves. Like I always say this, the 8th house is like we're going into those weird, psychic places. We're pulling tarot cards. That's the 8th house. 12th house is like we're going to meditate at the ashrams. We're traveling to different countries to reach enlightenment. That's more 12th house energy. They're different. Okay. So 7th house Lord is so important if it goes into a moksha house, more so 8 and 12. We are getting a lot of that spiritual influence onto the relationships and the partners and the business partners, best believe it. All right. Now, next important aspect is planets that go 7th from the moon. So if we get K2 7th from the moon, Jupiter 7th from the moon, we are getting that spiritual, philosophical energy into it. K2, remember, is more spiritual, strange, past life, karmic. I can't grasp it. I can't understand it. K2 is confusing because it's elusive. All right, K2 is like... I feel like whenever I talk about Vedic astrology and I talk about Rahu Ketu, I like feel the energy of the gods with me and I'm like, oh God, they're trying to explain something. But K2 is like this very elusive energy that you're trying to grasp and hold on to and you're like, don't leave, right? That's K2. You're like, don't just go off into the ethers, but it does because it's elusive and illusionary. All right. So K2 influence is more of that weird spiritual energy that we learn lessons from, and then those lessons come in and they leave just as quickly, and it's fleeting. It's like that. Jupiter is the energy of teacher, guide, guru. So what is more spiritual than attracting relationships where they are teaching you about things, right? Where they're teaching you lessons, and it can be very spiritual, philosophical lessons, 100%, right? Someone has Jupiter in the 7th, Jupiter 7th from the moon, attracting partners that teach you about beliefs and morals and principles and those higher places in this lifetime. So Jupiter is the karaka or the indication of the teacher, right? So you can find yourself drawn to people that have very strong belief systems. I believe in this. I believe in this. These are my beliefs, right? It's very Jupiterian in that way. And you can also get partners that are overly moralistic and overly set in their beliefs as well, too. That's that Jupiter influence on the 7th or 7th from the moon. It's more of that philosophical, moralistic energy. K2 is more like, oh, here's this weird spiritual psychic, it's like that. It's a little bit different. But Jupiter is still very spiritual. It's very much about teaching us lessons, right? The way that I would explain Jupiter in the 7th or 7th from the moon is you're attracted to someone who's like talking about, I believe in this and this is how I got to this belief system. And, it's more like that. And they're telling you, oh, you should really do this and you should adopt this belief and maybe this can help you. It's like Jupiter is a lot of that teaching and guidance energy in the 7th from the moon. Or in the 7th in the D9 navamsha. All right. So that's that Jupiterian influence onto the relationship aspects in someone's Vedic astrology charts. Now, another influence that is very important as well too is going to be when someone has Saturn influencing their 7th, but this is a different sort of karmic or spiritual aspect, right? So in the beginning of this video, I talked about how Saturn is more of that like daily, structured energy. It's more of that, oh, we can get through these more boring experiences. Saturn can go the long haul, right? But here's the thing, if we have Saturn influence on our 7th or Saturn influencing Venus, we're attracted to relationships that have some sort of karmic binding, even through, darker or harder times as well too. So Saturn is a karmic influence, but I would say it's less of a spiritual influence, right? So the first aspects that we talked about, which is K2's influence on the 7th, K2's influence on Venus, 7th house Lord in the 8th house, 7th house Lord in the 12th house, or Jupiter's influence. And that is more so like these very spiritual connections and relationships. Saturn is giving karmic relationships where we're having some sort of binding influence or element, but it's more so the mundane, the day-to-day, and we're just like working through things karmically and sticking them out, even when things get more boring as well too. So Saturn is karmic, but I would say it's a little bit less of that like higher octave of spirituality, right? And another thing is taking these houses, right? So if you have, Venus in a moksha house in itself, Venus in the 8th house, Venus in the 12th house, you are also attracted to those moksha relationships, because those are the houses of moksha and spirituality, right? So like Venus in the 8th, attracted to relationships and connections where you transform through them, you spiritually transform. Venus in the 12th, attracting relationships where there is that weird moksha influence and energy on it as well too. All right. And again, I want to emphasize it's not better, it's not worse, it's not this, it's not that. So we have to like detach from all these sort of ideas that we have about things. That's the beauty of Vedic astrology. It kind of rewires your brain in the sense that you view things very differently when you understand that we all have our own karma to unravel in this lifetime. My karma is not the same as the person next door's karma. My karma is not the same as my best friend's karma, right? My karma is not the same as the guy I'm dating's karma, etc. It goes on. It's all different, right? And so someone might look at my 7th house energy and think it's weird that I'm always attracting these like spiritual, psychic, past life connections. And they might be like, I don't want anything to do with that. Right? Because that's not in their chart. That's not in their dharma. They don't want to go there, right? Someone has like Saturn, Venus, Saturn in the 7th, Saturn with the moon. They would want more of those just like chill, normal, day-to-day relationships, right? Someone has Venus in the 7th, Venus 7th from the moon. They want to be dating like the artists and the models, and they don't always need to go to those deep, deep spiritual places in their relationships, but that's their chart. That's their karma. That is their astrological energy, right? And the beauty of Vedic astrology is you're going to understand these aspects and these patterns and these themes and these cycles in your life. And you're also going to understand why it is unique to you and why someone else doesn't have it, right? And that's beautiful, because then it takes away and strips away a lot of that judgment we tend to have as humans, right? So what could be more profound than understanding your own karma, your own dharma, embodying that and embracing that, and then also understanding that someone else is on their own completely different path and journey as well too. All right. And another important aspect of this is it's not about changing our natural attractions and what we're drawn to, but it's about working with the energy. So if you have a lot of these placements in your D1 or your D9 navamsha, this is what you're drawn to. These are the kind of relationships, sort of archetypes you're going to be connected to. It's not about changing it. It's not about fixing your innate, natural energy, but it's about working with the higher octaves of it. So not getting stuck in these like elusive, weird karmic relationships and connections where it's never going to work out on the physical plane, right? We have to find that balance. But knowing like I am going to have to end up with someone who has a connection to the divine. If you have these placements, it's kind of going to be like that. There is going to have to be some spiritual undertone to the connections and to the relationships. All right. So let me know if you guys have these placements down below. I find it to be just so freeing to know these aspects of yourself and why you're attracting cycles and certain energies and relationships. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing this or that about it. It just is as it is and as it's meant to be, but we can move within it and work through patterns through astrology, which is really cool. So these are placements that give you more of that attraction to spiritual, karmic-y, elusive, but also connections and relationships that we learn and grow a lot through, right? The beauty of having these placements and this energy in your chart is we are attracting relationships that teach us a lot spiritually, teach us a lot about ourselves. We can grow and we can heal and we can evolve through these relationships as well too. And again, it's just different for everyone. Like for me, I'm having the time of my life with my past life, guru from the other lifetime. Someone else might think it's like they don't want anything to do with that weird sort of karmic energy, and it's totally different. It's totally different. All right. Sending all the love, sending all the best vibes. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know as well too what topics you want me to go into, because usually I just go into whatever feels right and whatever I feel like the gods are trying to channel through me astrologically. But if there's a specific sort of, video that you guys want me to make content on, I'm always open. And I'm just grateful for everyone, and I love you guys. All right, we'll talk soon. Bye, guys.